Welcome, Life Sciences, to yet another exciting life science lesson. We're following on the path of microorganisms, really small little things that unfortunately cause a lot of harm. And today we're going to focus on the microorganism of the kingdom fungi. So far, we've looked at 3 microorganisms. This is the last one in our microorganism series. We looked at viruses, we looked at bacteria, and we've looked at protists. And fungi is the last one in the group of microorganisms. Now, if we have a look at fungi, I quite enjoyed putting this question together, that fungi, all right, I love to eat fungi, and fungi is mushrooms, right? And we use yeast when we bake bread. But also remember what we're focusing on. We're focusing on the diseases that these microorganisms, all right, are going to cause. So it's a funny thing. Really like to eat it, but at the same time, it really can make you sick. So that's the concept that we're going to look at when we're looking at fungus. Now, remember guys, for each of the microorganisms, we have followed a particular pattern of what we need to look at, right? So the 3 things that we need to focus on for each of our microorganisms. One is the characteristics. So why is it in that particular kingdom? What characteristics is unique to that particular microorganism? Right, then we also look at the structure. For fungus, there's a little bit more, there's lots of scope here, but we're going to focus on particularly bread mold. I'm sure lots of you have sometimes grown your own bread mold, even though you shouldn't have. And then what we're going to look at the last is we look at a series of diseases, right, that fungus could, all right, obviously cause. Pathogenic, viruses, bacteria, and protists. We looked at the same thing, and then at the end, we concentrated on a disease that could have an effect. Luckily for us, fungus is not so deadly as the previous ones. It causes a little bit of discomfort, all right, but we'll get to that just now. Let's have a look at what we're going to look at. There's quite a few words here that I think are going to be new for you. It is quite heavily, all right, terminology-wise, the words are new. You might not be able to understand them, but please remember, have a look at them, use your resources, be able to understand what they mean as we go through, all right, this lesson, so those terms are going to be explained to you, so you'll be able to understand it just a little bit clearer. Okay, guys, so what are we looking at when we look at fungi? Right, so let's have a look at the characteristics. So the first thing we need to look at, unlike bacteria, they're the same as protists. Fungi are eukaryotic. And when we look at the cell, what are we looking at? We're looking at an organism that has a definite nucleus, right? That's what eukaryotic means. And also, because it's a little more complex, we're going to see all these different organelles, endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi body, etc. Now, when we use the term microorganism here, we still need to use a microscope sometimes, but have a look here. I think a lot of you, all right, have grown mold before. We often use the word mold, all right, when we use fungi, and it's something we can see. And as I said, I love mushrooms, right? And mushrooms are fungi, and a lot of it, we can see it, we can cook with it, and even though I look at the bread mold here, we might not be able to see the detail, but I definitely can see that there's something growing on my bread, right? And that would stop me from eating it before I get sick. Okay, now there's a lot of terminology here when it comes to how fungus receive their food. All right, so very importantly, all fungus are heterotrophic. What does that mean? Very important, they don't have chlorophyll. So if you have a look, if I go to the pictures over here, even if you see something kind of greenish on there, there's no chlorophyll. They need to live on something and get the food from that. If you look at mushrooms, you don't see any kind of green. Right, so guys, very important, they need to get their food some other way other than photosynthesis. Now, we get a few different terms that we're going to look at. The first one is we say that fungi is saprophytic. And what do we mean by that is fungi need to live on something, right? They need to eat something. When we use the word saprophytic means they live on dead organic matter. So what I'm saying to you is if something dies, an animal dies, or even the food that you've got in your house has been picked off the cheese that we've made, right, we leave it in the fridge, it's not living. So what happens is the fungi eats on that. So if something dies, if an animal dies, or if the leaves fall from the tree, right, the fungus is going to take all that food from that dead matter. Right, it's dead, that still means that there's stuff inside it, and that's what they're going to do. They're very good, all right, for breaking down dead matter, returning all those nutrients to the soil. Let's have a look at their conditions, and you'll see that. They like warm, moist, and dark places, right? So they don't need sunlight, no chlorophyll, they don't need sunlight. Warm and moist, nice temperature. What is another moist? Water, all right? So we need to have nice warm temperatures. Dark, we don't need the sunlight because we don't need to photosynthesize. Okay, some are parasitic, and we're going to have a look just now. What does that mean? Is they cause harm. Some actually cause harm, and those are the diseases that we're going to look at just now, all right? So if it's a parasite, it is obviously, we look at symbiosis, it is going to cause harm. However, there are also some fungi that are mutualistic. What does that mean? They have a relationship where the two benefit, right? And we're going to look at the different relationships there. So when it comes to fungi, they have this various ways of which they can obtain food. Right, and that's quite important to how we look at. They're not part of the plant kingdom. They're not algae, a protist. They don't have chlorophyll. They don't have these roots, stems, and leaves. So they're in the kingdom fungi, right? And these are the characteristics that they're going to show. Okay, guys, so let me show you what I mean by saprophytic. So if you have a look at the pictures that I've chosen, right? They are feeding off, they want the food. What's in here? What's in an apple? What's in an orange? Sugar, right? What is sugar? Is glucose. And what do all living things need? Glucose, because they need it for energy, right? Later on in the year, you're probably going to look at, right, cellular respiration, and all cells need to cellular respire. And what do they need? They need this glucose. What does fruit have? Right, glucose, fructose. All right, oopsie daisy, let me just quickly erase that quickly. Right, spell it properly for you. Okay, glucose is really important. Here's bread over here. And what has bread got into it? Glucose. So it gets in there, it burrows, and it takes all that food from it. Saprophytic. Okay, oh, gross. Okay, this is parasitic. And this we're going to look at just now is athlete's foot. Right, now if you have a look here, there's nice, it's dark, it's warm, and it's moist. If you don't try your toes properly, this is so gross. I hate feet, right? But this is athlete's foot. And this is a fungus that's feeding, right, on the skin. And it's not going to kill you, but it is going to cause discomfort. Your feet are going to itch, and they're going to peel, and they could be quite sore. But we're going to have a look at that just now. All right, guys, then the next one, this is quite, all right, an important concept, and we're going to look at it later when we look at how microorganisms, all right, are very important in our environment. I don't know if you've ever seen this markings or these markings on tree trunks on plants, and I wonder what you've ever thought it is. This is called lichen or lichen, but we call it lichen. And what it actually is, have a look at this picture. It's fungi, notice by the yellow, but it's also got algae with it. Now, how does it help each other? When we look at the structure of fungi have got roots, right? They're not really proper roots, but they've got like these things, I'm going to put here, roots. They're actually called hyphae. And they are going to dig into the tree, and they're the support structure. Now, have a look at the algae. The algae are green. So what do you think they have? They have chlorophyll. So what can algae do? Photosynthesize. Right, so if they can do photosynthesis, what are they going to make? They're going to make food. So what does the fungi have? They have the support system to keep it on the tree. And in turn, what do the algae do? They provide food. Right, they provide food. And lichen are really good pollution indicators. If an area has got dirty and lots of pollution, lichen don't really grow there. If an area's got lots of oxygen and the air is clean, you're going to go and see a lot of lichen. I want you to go out, see if you can find some lichen. See if you can find it. Go and look on rocks, go and look on trees, right, and see if you can find it. Okay, the next one, it's quite a bit of a spelling. These are called mycorrhiza. Now, this is the root of the plant, okay, the blue that you can see here. All of these white things are actually not roots. They're fungus, and they go into the soil. I'm going to change the color now, and I'm going to show them. So all of these red things are fungus threads. Right, now what do? As soon as you put threads out all over the show, what are those fungi going to do? They're going to absorb water, and they're going to absorb the nutrients. Right, so they help the plant. And what does the plant make? It makes food, photosynthesis, glucose. So the plant gives it glucose, and what does the fungi do? It helps the plant absorb all the water and the nutrients. What is a mutualistic relationship? When both benefit. And you can see here, both need each other to benefit. Okay, guys, now when we look at I don't know if you know what this is. This is yeast. It's one of the few, all right, unicellular, all right, fungi that we're going to find. Now, as I said to you, fungi are decomposers. This is now their characteristics. They are decomposers. They break down all living things, right? And they can, when they reproduce, these are spores. These are asexually. This is yeast reproducing. And where sometimes when conditions are not so great, two algae can actually, all right, not two algae, two fungi can actually join together. They join. It doesn't happen that often. They join together and they move certain things. You don't have to know the details. Move across and they can make a new, all right, fungi. And I'm going to show you just now exactly how, right, what we're talking about. Okay, guys, so when we look at a fungus, all right, most of it is multicellular. That's going to be your bread molds and your mushrooms, all right, and yeast is going to be, all right, your exception, which is going to be unicellular. Remember, yeast is what we use to make breads, what we use to make alcohol. Right, now this is the diagram that you're going to need to be able to recognize as fungus. Remember, each of time we need to have some kind of recognition. And this is the bread mold that we are going to, all right, concentrate on. Now, I want you to imagine this is the bread underneath here. And what the fungus does, it's not roots, guys. It is rhizoids. They look like this up top here. They long, all right, slender. They've got no chlorophyll, cytoplasm. And what they do is inside here, they dig into the bread. And guess what? They've got an enzyme in the bread called amylase. You guys have got the same thing in your mouth. And what it does, it takes all the glucose, right, the glucose, and it takes it, that's its food. It convert all the starch into bread, into glucose. And when the bread mold, okay, I don't know if you've ever seen when you see the dark colors, it has like a stem, but it's not a stem. We call it a sporangiophore, because at the very top, there's this, all right, when we do the bread mold, it's usually a big black, All right, a big black structure. I want to show you over here. If you see under the microscope, right, there's a big black structure at the top, and inside there, we've got spores. And what those spores do is, can you see over here, when this bursts, put a lot of water in it, it bursts, and all of these spores drop to the bread, and what do they start growing? They put all these hyphae, all right, these rhizoids, these roots, and they start to take all the nutrients from the bread, and they're going to grow, all right, and form spores again. So when you have a look at, I don't know if any of you have ever left bread, all right, in your suitcase, or you've hidden it somewhere, and it looks furry. It's like fuzzy. That's exactly what you've got. It's all these like strands that are trying to get into the bread, and those color ones are the big balls where the spores are. And a spore can make a new, all right, plant. And if those spores burst and they fall onto the bread, they're going to keep on growing because they want all the nutrients. Okay, guys, that's it for now. We're going to have a quick break, and we'll be right back.